Don't you know that they'll always be true?
Oh, hi fans of high quality entertainment. I apologize. I'm just having my shower. I didn't know I was doing my video yet. I'll be with you in a minute. I'm completely naked right now. I apologize for that intro. Anyway, this video, I'm not sure what I'm going to title it, but it's mainly about how loyal, I'm trying to think of the proper word, how loyal I am to a band that I love, to the point, but not all the time. But most of the time, I'm so loyal to a band, when they change members, like even one member, I'm usually kind of turned off by it. I sometimes stop buying their albums, and I'll just go through some bands and let me know what you think about all of this yourself. So let's start with Alice Cooper, because in the news, the original Alice Cooper band has reunited. They have a new album coming out. They have their first single. It was released just in the last day, and it sounds pretty good. I was impressed with it. And in my CD exchange with Glenn Kellaway, I gave him the recent Alice Cooper band reunion. They performed in a small club, and I know that the original Alice Cooper members have played with Alice Cooper on, some songs on some of his solo albums, off and on. But I never really followed Alice Cooper's solo career. I'm just an Alice Cooper band fan. And School's Out, Deluxe Edition, Killer, of course, $1 Billion Babies, Easy Action. The only ones I'm missing from the band is Pretty's For You and their final album together, Muscle of Love. So I do need to get those. But yeah, when Alice Cooper started his solo career, it was okay to me, but I just didn't like the fact, for me, back when I was younger, I was thinking that's not Alice Cooper. I mean, that is Alice Cooper, the lead singer, but that's not the Alice Cooper band, right? And so it kind of put me off of Alice Cooper, the singer, a little bit, right? And I never did get into his solo career, but I'm sure, I've heard some of his albums through the years, and they're, okay, but I'm just, like I said, I'm loyal for the most part, depending on the band, I guess. But it is, and the thing too is, what I love about this reunion is, it is the original members, except for, of course, sadly, Glenn Buxton, who passed away in the 90s, but it's all the other original members. So looking forward to the new album. Let's take a band like the Rascals. At one point, I think it was after this album, I believe, that Eddie Brigada left, and so it was only Dino, Gene, and Felix left. And they made further albums. I would still consider that the Rascals, right? Maybe not as good without Eddie, but I would still, I would still consider them to be the real Rascals, right? Queen. Now, Queen went through their whole career, just the four of them, and none of them, like during the Queen years, if one of the band members left, say, even John Deacon, the bassist, if he left and they brought in a new bassist, I wouldn't consider it Queen. Because, John Deacon was 1/4 of Queen, and his bass, his bass work, and, some of the songs he wrote, like Another One Bites the Dust. So he was a big part of Queen. The Who. This was the last, back in the day of vinyl, the last Who album I ever bought. Because without Keith Moon or John Entwistle, I seriously don't consider it The Who. Right? As good as, maybe they were later on with Kenny Jones or Zach Starkey, for me, it's not The Who. So I consider this the true final Who album. And it's a good one. Led Zeppelin. The smartest thing they did when sadly John Bonham passed away is they broke up. I know that they did the reunion later on with Jason Bonham, and that was really, a respectful way for them to finish the career of Led Zeppelin, even though, is that Led Zeppelin with Jason Bonham on drums instead of John Bonham? I would have to say, for the reunion, I would have to say yes, because John Bonham had passed away, and they they did a live show with John Bonham's son, and out of respect, so I think they handled the legacy of Led Zeppelin pretty well. Now, a band that has gone through a lot of different members. Sometimes I don't care. For instance, King Crimson. This was the debut album, and then I think 2 of the members left. And so through the years, members would come and go, but the main person is Robert Fripp, right? So that's a little different for me, but maybe there's fans of just this album, and then they didn't they were so loyal to this band that they said that's it. That's not King Crimson anymore. But I still consider, the later albums real King Crimson. What about the Doors? So when Jim Morrison passed away, as some of you know, or most of you know, they continued on without Jim Morrison, and they released 2 more albums, Other Voices and Full Circle. Are they as good as the ones with Jim Morrison? No. But I did buy, back in the day, I did buy Other Voices. And I thought it was a good album. Not a great album, but a good album. And so that didn't bother me as much because Jim Morrison passed away, right? And the Doors still wanted to make music. They could have gotten another singer or whatever, but the 3 of them recorded a couple of albums, which, I know not all Doors fans are crazy about, but like I said, I think Other Voices was a pretty good album. How about The Clash? Mick Jones left after this album. There he is there. And they put out one more album, with Joe Strummer, called Cut the Crap. I never bought it because I didn't consider that The Clash without Mick Jones. And it is a horrible, I did hear it later on, the album, and it wasn't very good. So this is what I would consider the final Clash album. How about Creedence Clearwater Revival? So Tom Fogerty, John Fogerty's brother, this was his final album with CCR, and CCR continued on. They made one final not god-awful, but one mediocre album, Mardi Gras. But at the time, did I consider that a CCR album? Yes, I did. He decided to leave, but still, I would consider that Creedence Clearwater Revival. I mean, it might be different if John was the one that left, because he was the main songwriter and the voice of CCR, right? But AC/DC. Bon Scott, sadly, passed away. And he was replaced, as we all know, by Brian Johnson. And they put out this excellent album. I still consider this AC/DC because a member died, and it's not the band's fault, that he passed away. So, and they wanted to continue, and they did a pretty good job continuing on. How about Blue Oyster Cult? Now, The Bouchard brothers, Albert and Joe, they left around the same time. So, they were replaced with other band members. I still consider them Blue Oyster Cult, even though, I don't like them. They weren't as good, when they put out later albums without the Bouchard brothers. But it's still Blue Oyster Cult, right, to me. The Rolling Stones. Brian Jones, of course, was let go, and then soon after, sadly, he passed away. And then, even later on, band members come and go or whatever, but I always consider this the Rolling Stones. Ron Wood wasn't an original member, but he is a Rolling Stone as far as I'm concerned. So, how about Velvet Underground? John Cale had left by this time and was replaced by Doug Yule. They're still the Velvet Underground to me, and I love all four of the Velvet Underground albums with Lou Reed. I consider the fifth album just to be a Doug Yule solo album, and the record company kind of forced him to name it Velvet Underground. How about Talking Heads? They went through their whole career with the original members, but if David Byrne had left, for instance, and was replaced by some other singer, I don't know if I could call that Talking Heads. Or even if Tina left, the bassist. But it just depends, on if a original member passes away or leaves the band, I don't blame the band, I guess, for wanting to continue on, right? Within reasons. And just, once again, being loyal. Uriah Heep, I was a big Uriah Heep fan, but by the time David Byron left, I was done with them. I know they put out, some good music since then, but I just love the mainly original members. I know there were a couple of members that came and went, but David Byron was a big part of early Uriah Heep, so I was just a loyal fan to them. Let's not talk about Yes. Same for me, like when John Anderson was finally out of Yes, Yes continued on with John Davidson, well, first some other singer, I forget his name at the moment, and then John Davidson, is it? Davidson. And you can't replace John friggin' Anderson in the band. Yes, he was a big part of the Yes sound for me. Even though Steve Howe's still in the band, and I love Steve Howe's guitar work, he's one of my favorite guitar players, but it's just not the same. So I gave up on Yes after Magnification, the last album with John Anderson. And then even today, there's Randy Bachman. He's touring now under the name BACHMAN-TURNER Overdrive, even though when they're playing live, it's just him and his son Tal and what other musicians. Fred Turner, whose name is in the band's name, isn't playing, so I don't know how they can kind of get away with that. I think it's kind of sad in a way, even though I think they are recording a new album with Fred Turner on vocals, which is good. But yeah, touring under the Bachman-Turner Overdrive name without Turner on stage, I think is kind of silly. And lastly, of course, the Beatles. I know, when Julian Lennon started his solo career and there were rumors, the Beatles could get back together with Julian replacing John on vocals. It's, even back then I was thinking, no, I don't want that to happen. It's not, it might be okay, but it's not going to be the Beatles. I think it's kind of silly. The Beatles are the Beatles. John, Paul, George, Ringo, that is it. So yeah, I would love your thoughts on, are you loyal like me, or you don't care, you just whatever. So thanks for watching, and have a great day. I feel so fresh for some reason.